Back in the day, when I was young and, well, I'm still dumb, so I can't really use that phrase. In any case, I used to rent a relatively unknown game known simply as Kickmaster. I don't know why, but I had always enjoyed it. It was essentially an action game with a tiny bit of RPG added to it. You play as a dude named Thonolin, at least I think that's how you pronounce it, who goes around avenging his brother and attempting to rescue the princess by, what else? Kicking the shit out of enemies, in almost a literal sense. There's no punches in the game at all. It's all different variations of kicks. Now, the story, other than the kicking part, isn't anything that hasn't been done before. Your goal is to complete 8 stages, fight the final evil sorcerer named Belzed, and save the kingdom. The game is relatively short, able to be completed in about an hour, but that doesn't mean it's easy. There's a few reasons for this. First and foremost, the game is called Kickmaster, so let's talk about the kicks and controls. The controls start off easy enough. The control pad moves you in the obvious directions. Down crouches, and if you hold up, you'll do some kicks that are aimed for higher enemies. A jumps, B kicks. Depending on your level and what direction you're pressing dictates what kick you use. In the beginning of the game, you start off at level 0. You have access only to a few basic kicks. You have your basic front kick, your up kick, used by holding up while pressing B, and your sweeping kick, which is obviously crouching and kicking. At level 1, you gain what I consider to be the best kick in the game. And it's not really even a kick, it's a knee drop. And you perform it by jumping, holding down, and pressing B. Thunderland drops to the ground with some pretty damaging force. I use this attack more than any other in the game, because it does heavy damage and also makes you a bit harder to hit. Level 2 unlocks a sliding kick, which isn't as useful as you might think. Once you slide, you can't stop until you hit the end of your duration, or if you get hit by an enemy attack. This often poses a problem, as if you accidentally press the combination to do the slide, which is down either horizontal direction B, you can accidentally slide off a cliff to your death. Level 3 gives you a cool move that gives you a bit more range. By pressing up and forward in B, you do a basic kick, hop up slightly and do a front drop kick. This is useful for bosses that get a slight extra bit of reach to your attack. Level 4 unlocks what the game considers to be a high kick to roundhouse, which is really just 2 kicks in a row. It's helpful, but not as good as the previous kick. Level 5 is what I consider to be the worst attack in the game. It's the same as the sliding attack, but it can now be performed in the air. What makes this move suck is that it has the same fault as the regular slide, but it's worse because if you're jumping and moving forward and you try to kick, you'll perform this attack. In order to not do this aerial slide, you have to jump, get near the enemy, stop moving, then kick. Otherwise, you might be able to kill the enemy, and then fall right into a pit. Level 6 unlocks the best standing kick, which is just a spinning kick that attacks on both sides. This is very useful and has a good range. The final kick you unlock is called the Blazing Flip Kick, and it just looks odd. Let me slow this down to see what's going on. Okay, I want to see a martial artist do this. Anyway, although it attacks all around you, it's not entirely useful. It does take the place of your up kick though, which is kind of disappointing. The other issue with the kicks is that many of them need to be timed to hit the enemy. If you're a split second off, the enemy may come in and hit you, bouncing you backwards and stopping your attack. This really comes into play with the more advanced kicks, such as the kicks that do 2 attacks with 1 button press. If you complete the first kick and get hit in the transition to the second kick, your attack is cancelled and you take damage. Also, Thunderland moves pretty slowly, so it can be a bit troublesome to navigate the terrain, especially the stages where there's cliffs. When you get hit, you get pushed back, and that in itself can cause problems. In stages where the screen scrolls upwards, there's no going back down. If the screen scrolls up and you fall in a gap, you die. This becomes a true test of patience in the final stage, which is just a large tower. For example, here there's these acidic bubbles falling indefinitely, spikes coming out of the ground, and wizards throwing fireballs and teleporting all over. There's a lot to process in your mind, and you need to keep in mind that one wrong move may cost a life. Thankfully though, you don't need to worry about health as much because this game contains magic. In almost every stage, you can find 2 relics that give you magical powers, although in a few stages there's only 1 power-up. Every stage, other than the final one, gives you a relic when you defeat the boss. The other relic is either in open space, or more often, hidden in the middle of the level. When you find a magical power in the middle of the stage, the screen explains what you found and what it does, then it just throws you back into the action, but typically a bit ahead of where you actually picked it up. If it's at the end of the stage, you get to the password screen and then start the next stage. I'll admit, I hardly used any of the magic other than about 3 powers. The 3 I used were 2 variations of a healing spell and an earthquake skill, which immobilizes all enemies on the screen for close to 10 seconds. You're also able to use skills that throw down lightning around you, fireballs magic, and even fly, although that one is pretty costly, as it costs 10 MP per second. When they mention second, it's closer to about a half a second, as it depletes your MP very quickly, and it doesn't allow you to fly very well, so it's not entirely useful. I mentioned magic kicks levels and such, so I guess it's time to elaborate on the RPG elements of the game. Basically, when killing creatures, various items will pop out. Usually there's 3 items per monster, but this can change depending on how many items are actually on the screen. These vary from small experience plates that give you 10 XP, medium ones that give you 30, and the large shield looking ones that give you 50. You want these the most. There's also 2 magic power-ups that give you MP. One is a small beaker looking one, which gives you 5. The other looks like a jug, which replenishes 10 MP. You'll occasionally find hearts, which give you 1 full bar of life back. You can also find skulls, which damage you slightly. You'll also find gems, which are just good for points. The other, rarest power-up, is a 1-up, and the use for that one is pretty obvious. Other than this extra life, you can only gain another life by exceeding 10,000 and 50,000 points. As for the kick levels, you gain a new level every 1,000 experience points. This unlocks a new kick, adds 100 MP to your maximum, and also gives you an extra life bar to play with. Once you hit level 8, you can still collect XP, but there's no purpose. Also, your MP then maxes to 999, which is more useful than maxing out your XP, as there's no bonus for that. The music is pretty interesting. It seems to fit the mood perfectly. The opening music in the forest is just awesome, and it's a great opening. And it just builds up the feeling that you're at the start of your journey. The Stronghold music is dramatic and kind of creepy, and it fits when you're just looking around fighting ninjas and shielded foes. The 4th stage music is awesome, as it takes place on a mountain range, and I just find it to be catchy. The boss music feels threatening, and it almost builds tension while you're trying to kick in the head of the enemy demon. Overall, it's really good music. The graphics, on the other hand, they seem to be hit or miss. The actual stages look good, again, especially for the mountain range. The town, which is the second last stage, looks gritty and evil, but it's also kind of bland. My biggest gripe is that the game seems to always have a flickering feel to it. Even when I rented it when I had a working NES, I had this problem. Maybe the video store just had a dirty copy. I know in this recent case, it's the ROM, as I could never find a program that could flawlessly run the game. I also looked up videos about the game and they ran fine, so I know it's just me. I know, it makes me sad a bit, and I can't do anything about it, but I'm just throwing this out there. The bosses and even the enemies have a nice variety to them. One moment you'll be fighting a skeleton, the next some mini goblin sort of thing. There's also zombies and flying chicken things. I have no idea how to best describe some of these things that you fight. The bosses are pretty interesting too. The most oddest is the octopus. It's not the octopus itself, it's the fact that there's a ton of bubbles flying at you. It just makes it difficult to move around, and you need to attack the tentacles first before the main boss. And why are bubbles damaging you? I assume they're acidic, as I called them earlier, but I really don't know. Some of the bosses do repeat in one form or another though. For example, here you're fighting a lion that just jumps around, spits things at you, and launches itself at you like a fireball. I think of Kirby's Adventure for this, because the lion actually gives you the power for fireball. Ah, Kirby. Now that's a game I need to review at some point. In any case, you later fight a unicorn that has the same attacks. The bird creatures also spawn frequently, although the only one that comes in boss form, they focus on you fighting 2 of them at once. There is a password system, and I believe there's infinite continues. I know what you're thinking. Why do I need a password system if there's only 8 stages, infinite continues, and it only takes about an hour to finish? Well, here's why. First, the final boss, Belzed. After fighting 4 statues, you fight the sorceress. Belzed's a bitch because she will only move vertically. This doesn't seem like a big problem, but she comes down to the ground, strikes lightning directly where you're standing, and then jumps away before you can really get too close. It took me a few attempts, and I just got pissed off and finally looked it up. The easiest way to kill her, which is really cheap, is to use the earthquake skill, because it even works against her to freeze her in place. Constantly do this to prevent her from moving and just kick her to death. And then you get the shitty ending of Donalyn flying and carrying the princess away to safety and vanishing. Then you get told that your journey isn't over, and that there's a harder difficulty. So apparently you can finish that game, and then there's no alternate ending though. but the harder game does force you to start with your beginning stats again, so your level doesn't carry over, which kinda sucks. The password system does account for the difficulty though, so unless you want to sit there and attempt to complete the entire game in one sitting, the passwords might be helpful. In closing, Kickmaster to me is one of my all-time favorite NES games. I don't know why. Maybe it's the mix of action and RPG elements, maybe it's the fact that it's not very well known, maybe it's the fact that it's just fun to play. In any case, it's a good game, even with its flaws. If you get the chance, check it out. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. My final score is 8 out of 10. This is Reaper, and as always, happy fragging and have fun kicking shit.